Well, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to keep you awake. You've all had lunch, so now it's time to unwind a little bit. But my first thing I was thinking as I was sitting here today, and we're talking about foods and things that you eat, and I'm from southern Louisiana. So you'll notice that with my hand gestures, because if you cut my hands off, I couldn't talk. So I grew up in Baton Rouge, or outside of Baton Rouge, and have to have my hands or I can't talk. But I was thinking today, as we were talking about our food, and we were eating lunch and looking there at what we were eating, and I was going, this will be a great afternoon topic. But we've all heard the adage, you are what you eat. We've heard it ever since we were little, what do you eat? What do you put in your body? Well, if we think about it, our bodies, they're ours. No one controls them except us. So when we go for that extra candy bar, that extra helping of cake or whatever, we're doing that to ourselves. We're putting that into our bodies. What's really interesting is, what are we eating? There's a doctor, his name is Dr. George Malcolmus, and he's created a diet, and it's called the Hallelujah Acres diet. Some of you may have heard of it. But I love his saying. He says that American has a sad diet. It's our standard American diet, and it's basically that all of our foods are dead. We literally cook our food to death. How many of us in this room eat raw? Eat raw, R-A-W, eat raw. Okay, so some people are familiar with that concept. Eating raw is that you don't eat foods cooked. You mostly would eat your salads, or basically, cut up your squash or zucchini and just eat it without cooking it. But eating raw is really one of the best ways for us to eat, because foods in a raw state have most of our enzymes. And the interesting thing we don't talk about enough in our society is that we need enzymes. We need enzymes to break down our food and what we eat. When we're in our fast-paced life and we're running like we always do, what do we eat? How many of us in this room have younger children or teenagers and we're always on the go, this sporting event, this dance class, this, that, and the other, and where's our famous stop? Drive-through, fast food. So we're eating processed food. And it's not just that it's processed. I mean, if we go home and we cook our dinner, we've gone to the grocery store and we have, got some salad fixings, and we've made a nice large salad, and maybe we've broiled our chicken and something simple, some steamed vegetables. Those are good foods. That's what we're eating. A lot of us, now being from southern Louisiana, I'm going to add a lot of cayenne pepper and garlic and all these things to spice my foods up. But that's not necessarily something that's wrong with it. But when we go out and eat at our restaurants, food sure does taste good. Well, what's in that food is additives. They add a lot of preservatives, a lot of what we hear a big term now is MSG. How many of y'all are familiar with MSG? It's monosodium glutamate. What that is they add it to a lot of foods to make it taste better. Well, there's a lot of studies out there right now that just because it tastes good does not mean it's good for us. So that is one thing. The other thing with our foods, how many of us are really spoiled of going to the grocery store and we're buying our fruits and our vegetables and they look so pretty? I like pretty food. I'm sure y'all do too. But do we know what's been put on that food to make it so pretty? How many chemicals? How much has been added to that food? How has that food been modified? That's a big thing in our world right now, things that have been genetically modified. Well, that's what helps our food last longer. That's what helps our food look so pretty. That's why we can get beautiful fruit and vegetables in the heart of winter, because a lot of our foods are modified and how they grow them. So with those things being modified, it affects how our bodies react. So being that what we eat is how our bodies are affected, and then we're cooking our enzymes out of our food, no wonder we all have health issues. So that's what's happening. We're eating dead food. So a lot of us then develop health issues. We start having our indigestion. We start having our joint pain. Our stomachs hurt. So there's a lot of things that happen just because of what we put into our body. So knowing what we eat is a good thing to do. So okay, Yolanda, you've said this. Our food's not really healthy for us. What should we do? Well, the average person, if you live by yourself, as a lot of our elderly community do, you're not going to fix a table spread of food for yourself. It's going to be much easier to grab something quick, grab a processed food or something like that. So you want to take and do what steps that you can do. Well, we want to gradually eliminate toxic foods and products. Eat as natural and organic as you possibly can. And that's the big buzz now. Eat organic, eat organic. Well, I can say as a health food store owner and as a consumer, organic's great. And the first thing someone's going to tell me is, I can't afford that. Well, there's two sides to that. Maybe your budget won't allow that, but the health consequences, can you really afford those? Now, I'm not going to stand up here and say, you must go organic, because that's not what my heart believes. I believe to know the source of your food. Know where your food's coming from. If you plant your garden, you know what you've planted, you know where you've bought your seeds, you know what you fertilize the ground with and how it's growing. So know the source of your food. You know, if your neighbor has a garden and you know how they're growing the food, so know where your food's coming from. And that helps a lot. We have local farmers markets, we have fruit stands, you know, we have a lot of people here in our area that are growing food. And one of our jobs of being good stewards is we can support them and know what's happening, what's going into the food. So that's probably one of the biggest things that we promote is know the source of your food, know where it's coming from. And that way you can hopefully eliminate a lot of the toxins and things that we normally find in food. Also, it's really hard to keep an apple looking beautiful or an orange when it's traveled 1,300 miles to get to you. And there's studies right now that the food that we ate today probably traveled, unless it was grown locally, a minimum of 1,300 miles to get to our table. That's a lot of hands on it, and that's a lot of us not knowing where our food came from. That's one of the new push. If you've noticed lately at the grocery store, it says where your food came from. That's the big, if you look at any of your labels on your foods right now, it tells you where your food came from. And that's why. So what's the good news and the bad news about our health and foods? Well, the great things about our bodies are they're wonderful things. And good health is really natural for our body. If we put the right things in our body, our health can change. You know, we've all heard this, you know, food fuels our body. This also, what we eat today, we may or may not see the effects of it tomorrow, but we will see the effects of it from years from now. So just because you eat it today doesn't mean that you're not going to see effects 10 years from now. I have 2 teenage daughters. It is really hard, even though I own a health food store, they're teenagers. You know, they go places, they do things to get them to eat healthy. And let's look at our younger children. We see more diabetes, we see more health problems with our children, and it's probably directly related to what they eat. You know, our foods have been, you know, the meats that we eat are injected with a lot of hormones, which, you know, it's all out there. If you look at it, you can see what's happening. But our basic causes of illness relating to food is toxicity, timing, and our thoughts. And that sounds really weird, but we control what we do. You know, no one's going to make me put that, you know, extra piece of chocolate cake in my mouth, but I control that myself. So it's the timing of when we put the food in our body and how it affects us. Now, there may be somebody in this room that has a disease called celiac. Your granddaughter has that. Well, celiac is becoming really, really popular now, and what that is it's someone who cannot eat wheat gluten. The interesting thing is gluten is in a lot more things than wheat, and people become very, very ill, and so you'll have a lot of signs and symptoms of that. So we have control over our health, and a lot of people, I think this is a misconception, is age is no excuse for disease. Somewhere along the way in our society, we decided that as you got older, you had to be sick. I don't know who decided that, but somebody did. Because if you know, it's just expected. It's expected, well, I'm this age, so now I'm going to have arthritis. Or it's expected, I'm this age, so now I'm going to have cardiovascular disease. Or because I've eaten this way, I'm going to have high cholesterol. But that's not really true. The interesting thing is our body is made up of cells. We all know that. Everything that happens in our bodies actually happens on a cellular level. So how we treat the cells in our bodies is going to determine what happens to us. So what can we do? We can eat our way to better health. How do we do that? What do we do? Normally, what we like, which the bad thing is when we eat, teenagers are famous for this, but I don't like that, or kids, I don't like that. I don't like that food. I don't want spinach, it looks weird, or I don't want zucchini because it sounds funny. So it's really funny because we've conditioned ourselves into what we eat. So we're all going to go with the foods that we like. So if we went through the line at lunch today, and because when you were a little kid you didn't like corn, you probably didn't put corn on your plate. So not necessarily what we eat is actually what's beneficial for us. You have to acquire a taste for something. I can use a personal example. I grew up in a family where my mother cooked wonderful dinners every night, but my family was meat and potatoes, green beans and corn, and maybe carrots if we were lucky. Well, I started dating my husband when I was about 17, and I went to his family's for the first time. Well, they had cauliflower, and then they had squash and different things, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I've never seen this, let alone do I know how it tastes. So I've learned over the years to eat many things that I would have said, oh, I don't like this, I'm not going to try this, just because I'd never been exposed to it. So that's a lot of our issues is we won't try things. You know, they're saying, well, I'm not going to try it. But the other thing about food is, so our tastes are developed, they're not inherited. You know, you just don't like squash, you know, it didn't come down your genes, you know, it's we inherit, you know, we develop that, we don't want that taste. But think about it. Most all of us participate in some kind of social group of some kind. It might be a family reunion, it may be going to church or something. What do all these gatherings center around? Food. So food within itself, it feeds more than our body. It feeds us emotionally, it can feed us spiritually, and it's a major force in our life. You know, you have to eat 3 meals a day, you have to do this, you know, be sure you get your snack, be sure you do that. So food is really a driving force in the majority of our lives. But the interesting thing about our bodies is they're wonderfully made. We've all heard that, and none of us are alike, and we're all wonderfully made. But our bodies have everything that it needs to produce and promote natural health. We just have to put the right things in it. So if we put the right things in it, then our body will do everything else. Our bodies also will tell you if you're abusing it. And it's going to keep telling you until you stop. And I think that's pretty neat. How many of us will say, oh, I don't feel well today? But how many of us, when we do that, are we watching what we're putting in our body? Oh, I drink this and I get a headache. We'll never correlate that we're drinking that drink with a headache. We just say, I have a headache. But your body's going to keep giving you signs and symptoms of what you're doing and when you should stop. And it will keep going. And either you will stop or your body will stop you. There's no in between. That's why we all end up at the doctor's office most of the time. Because we've been doing something and we're abusing ourselves and there's nowhere else to go. Now, am I going to stand here and say, you know, you have to eat a certain way? We do need a certain amount of fat, you know, because the latest diet crazes, you know, eat a high carbohydrate diet or eat a high protein diet or whatever diet that's out there right now. But we need a balanced diet. We need carbohydrates, we need fats, we need proteins. But the interesting thing is we don't talk about is enzymes. We truly need enzymes. Enzymes are what breaks down our food. So if we're eating dead food, we especially need more enzymes to break down our food. And as we get older and are sicker, food combining takes on greater importance. Talking about my family, my brother was totally meat and potatoes. Well, now he's gotten older and he's realizing not eating all those vegetables when he was younger is catching up with him. So as we get older, we need to look actually now at diet changes. What can we do now? You know, can we incorporate more fresh fruits and vegetables in our diet? Can we incorporate those things that we haven't gotten in our diet, whole grains? So what can we do to start living, you know, a whole life that's going to help our diets and our foods and heal our bodies? Well, I talked a little bit earlier about watching the chemicals you put in your body. When you bring food home, wash it really, really good. I mean, some of us, based on income, where we live, geographics, you don't have a choice. I mean, you have to go to the supermarket or, Walmart or wherever to get your food. But when you go home, be sure you wash it really good. There's great food sprays out there that you can use and just wash your food really, really good, even though you'd like to eat as organic as possible. Exercise. None of us want to do that, but a little bit of exercise each day will help. Sunshine. Get out in the sun. 20 minutes a day in the sunshine does a world of good for our bodies. But more importantly, especially, I look around this room, most of us in here are women, and we totally neglect ourselves of adequate rest. We don't get enough rest because we're always on the go. That will hurt us in the long term. So get adequate rest. Eat whole foods coming in the form God made them, not invented or processed. So try to eat foods as you would prepare them instead of a box. Not only are foods in a box processed, they have very, very high sodium content. So those of you who do not need extra sodium, that becomes a problem because that box food has a lot of sodium, usually has a lot of carbohydrates, and also they want you to get more bang for your buck. So it actually has larger portions than you would probably eat. So those are things that you have. Try to eat your fruits and vegetables mostly raw. Some of you back there said you had heard of raw. Grab an apple and just slice it and eat it. Carrots if you want, eat those type of things. And the raw foods will actually help because it helps to increase the enzymes. Water. Okay, let's just take a poll here. How much water should we have a day? 6 to 8 glasses. Okay. What did you just say?
Depends on your body weight.
Exactly, it depends on your body weight. The rule that I've heard lately is take your body weight, divide it in half. That's how many ounces of water you should have a day. So, based on that, some of us need a lot of water. But our bodies are made mostly of water. And a lot of times, what do? We go to the cupboard and we grab something out to eat because we're hungry. Not so. We're not hungry, we're dehydrated because we don't drink enough water. So, if you read all the little diet buzz, drink a glass of water, wait 20 minutes. If you still feel hungry, then eat. Chances are you're not going to be hungry. You will have quenched your hunger by just drinking something. Let's see. So those are some interesting tips there. Now, one of the things that I had, when I was asked to talk, I had told Nancy that I would talk about, by owning a health food store, I have a lot of people that come in. And I've learned a lot in having the health food store for 3 years. Some people come in because they want natural and organic products. Some people come in because they just want to grab a multivitamin. But what I'm finding more and more recently is people come in because, for lack of better words, they're desperate. They don't know what to do. They're on lots of medicine. They've gone to the doctor. The doctor tells them, there's nothing else we can do for you. They're hurting, not only physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, because they're at wit's end. They don't know what else to do. Well, it's really neat because there are things you can do. You don't have to settle just for this particular diagnosis and this pill that the doctor gives you. You can start adding whole foods or different foods to your diet, and by doing that, I'm not going to say it's going to cure, but it can help you manage, it can help you feel better on certain diseases. So one that's very popular right now is Alzheimer's disease. Well, eating a well-balanced diet will really help. But the interesting thing is I've been looking at all these diseases is one of the things that probably none of us get enough of is fiber. With a lot of diseases, if you can get increased fiber, not to gross anyone out here, you're going to eliminate more. And by eliminating more, you're going to get the toxins that normally store up in your gut out of your body. So increased fiber will help in a lot of ways. Depending on the person, it would depend on how much fiber they actually needed. But you want to increase your fiber, and on a lot of these things, you want to avoid processed foods. because the more food's been processed, the less nutrition you're getting out of it. Arthritis. The interesting things is if you look at some of our medications for arthritis, most of them contain sulfur. But did you know that you can get natural sulfur out of foods? There are certain foods that you can eat that contain sulfur, such as asparagus, eggs, garlic, onions. You can also consume foods with amino acids, such as rice, wheat, rye. I brought a few samples, like, just some brown rice. Brown rice is very, very nutritious for you. These crackers right here are a good source there. Have 13 whole grains and fiber in them. Oat bran is really good for fiber, or steel cut oats. Any of those things are really, really good. Another thing you can do if you have severe arthritis is eat fresh pineapple, because it contains bromelain, which helps the joints. Again, increase your fiber. But another thing that's really interesting, most of us think that eating tomatoes would be great for us. Well, if you have arthritis, eating tomatoes, eggplants, even white potatoes, or peppers is not good for you. They're called nightshade vegetables, and they're not good for you to do that. Cancer, include grains, nuts, seeds, brown rice, millet, cereal, and wheat. Now, when I say the word millet, most of you are probably like, what's millet? Think of birdseed. The little bitty yellow pellets that you see, that's millet. Another thing that's really been interesting at our store that we've been experimenting with, and my friend Laura said, well, if this fits in, talk about it, is ancient grains. In our store, we're selling a lot of grains. The one thing a lot of us don't realize about the bread that we eat, even if it's whole wheat, is bread that we eat has been processed, and then it's been sprayed with vitamins. That's why on most all of our bread labels it says enriched with vitamins, because what happens is when you take the grain and you crack the kernel of grain, actually immediately the grain starts oxidizing and we start losing the nutrient value. After 48 hours, if you just took fresh grain, ground it, and laid it on the table, after 48 hours there's no nutritional content whatsoever. Well, what they found happened back, I guess probably in about the 1800s, maybe early 1900s, was that when people were just eating this, that's when they were developing the rickets, and they were developing joint problems and things like that. Well, what they found was the vitamins and nutrients were missing from the breads. So that's why they started adding those B vitamins and spraying them on the flour so that we would get the nutrients that we need. So we have a lot of people in our community that will come to our store and they will purchase the grains, and we will actually grind them for them, and then you go home and make your breads, and you have gotten fresh ground grains that have all of your nutrients and vitamins. And the interesting thing, one of the most interesting things, is people go, it helped my bathroom situation. I don't have the constipation that I used to have. I don't have the problems going to the bathroom that I used to have because I'm eating things that have increased fiber. But we have a lot of the different grains for those that have issue with wheat. We have quinoa. Quinoa is really interesting. It is the only grain that gives you complete amino acids. It is a complete protein. It gives you everything that you need in it. It's really easy to cook. You cook it just like rice. We have rye, we have barley, we have kamut, spelt. So we have a lot of grains there that you can do to make your own breads, and eating those grains are really, really helpful for you. But going back to cancer, vegetables such as your broccoli, your cabbage, your dark yellow vegetables such as carrots, pumpkins, squash, apples, and berries. And a lot of us, you hear the word juicing. You need to juice those carrots, juice your whatever, celery and apples and stuff. Well, if you don't have time to juice, you can buy it in a jar already juiced. Now, granted, it's not going to be as fresh if you sat there and ground those, had those carrots and made your own juice, but getting a pure carrot juice, one that hasn't had a lot of sugars added to it or things like that, is very helpful for you. So you could buy just carrot juice and drink it. That's something that's really good. The gentleman I mentioned earlier, Dr. Malcolm, that talked about eating raw foods, his story is really fascinating. His mother had colon cancer. She did all of what we would consider traditional medicine, and she passed away. Well, it wasn't very long, and I'm not sure on the exact dates, he found out he had colon cancer. And he decided there was no way he was going to do what he saw his mother go through. So he went back to, he's a pastor, so he went back to the Bible and he said he was going to eat how the Bible said you should eat. And so he did, and he started juicing carrots, and he uses barley juice and things like that. But he cured himself with foods. And so that's really interesting. He has a very fascinating story, and I can give you more information for anybody that wants to read about it. But also with cancer, you want to limit your processed foods. Our cardiovascular disease, again, you want a well-balanced diet, plenty of fiber, raw foods, garlic and onions. You will hear garlic and onions all day long, but does anybody know why? Guess? Anybody? Garlic is a natural antibiotic. Garlic is a natural antibiotic. It will help your immune system. Also, olives are a natural antibiotic. So those are things that will help your immune system. So pump up on garlic, pump up on onions. If you have thyroid issues, garlic and onions are great to help you with your thyroid, as well as tuna, any kind of fish. Salmon is really, really good. A lot of people, especially if you live by yourself, but you can buy canned salmon, and it'll give you your fish omega fatty acids and essential fatty acids that you need. The other thing you're going to find is on a lot of these things, it's going to tell us to eliminate sugar and white flour. Again, white flour has been processed more and more than just a whole wheat flour. Diabetes, low fat, high fiber, raw vegetables and fruits, grains, beans. How many of you in this room suffer with fluid retention? Fluid retention, where your feet swell, your hands swell. Yeah, fluid. High fiber diet, proteins. You want to eat eggs, fish. You want to avoid alcohol. Believe it or not, you'd probably want to avoid dairy products. You know, your cheeses, cheeses, milk, things like that. You want to avoid dairy products. High cholesterol. You want to eat apples, bananas, carrots, cold water fish. Again, pineapple, grapefruit. Increase your fiber. So there's a lot, there's all kinds of diseases out there. Increase your fiber, increase your fiber, increase your fiber. Eat raw fruits and vegetables. Those are all things that you can do. But a lot of us, I always ask people when they come into the store, they'll say, well, what can I do for this? Or I can't have sugar. What can I do? Well, we have a couple different alternatives for sugar. One's called agave nectar. It's from a plant, and it's a sweetener. Stevia. How many of you have heard of stevia? It's from a plant. You can buy it in packets or powder. Sometimes people will go, well, what can I cook with? I don't want to cook with just vegetable. I want to cook with something else. Coconut oil. Coconut oil is wonderful to cook in. I actually, for my bread recipes, call for oil. I use coconut oil instead of olive oil. Olive oil is great, but coconut oil is really good. Gives it a different taste and texture. Cherry juice is one of my favorite products. It's very good for arthritis. It's good for inflammation, anything that ends in the word berry. Antioxidants. If all of us just started eating more antioxidants in our diet, that would help pull the toxins that we get just by walking outside, the toxins that we breathe, and the toxins in our food. But cherries have been known to help with arthritis. And we have lots of customers who come in, and there was actually an article in the newspaper recently, and we sold out of cherry juice pretty quick. But if you take a tablespoon, this is a concentrated cherry juice, a day, it will really help to improve your arthritis symptoms. Antioxidants, again, you can get blueberry juice. If you don't want to eat blueberries, you can get blueberry juice. So there's a lot of things. If you need low-carb pasta, we have low-carb pasta. So there's a lot of things you can do. But the first thing I would do if you came into my store and said, I have this health problem, I'm going to say, are you on a multivitamin? And everybody goes, yeah, or no. The thing about multivitamins, again, we cook everything out of our food. So even if you eat fairly healthy, but you're cooking your food, you're cooking all the essential minerals, nutrients, and vitamins out of it. So a good multivitamin is really essential to all of our health and well-being. So I like liquids. I'm a big liquid person because if you take a liquid, you get better assimilation, you get better absorption in your body because your body doesn't have to think about it. When we take a pill, it has to go down, get into our stomach's got to think about breaking it down. Whereas a liquid, it doesn't. So I really like liquid vitamins. The other thing that we need is, we talked about, and I, in a rush, came and forgot, is if we are going to eat our standard diet, we need digestive enzymes. We need something to help us break down that food because the food doesn't have the enzymes that it once had. So we want digestive enzymes to help us break down our food. And the other thing is we want to protect our, everybody's heard probiotics or acidophilus. If you'll take a probiotic, that will help the intestinal health in your body, which will also, a lot of times after we take antibiotics or any of those type things, a probiotic will really help us to do that. There are wonderful books out there. I really like this book. It says The Doctor's Book of Food Remedies. It's really neat. You can look up a food. Let me turn to something that we may know about. Berries, you know, more than just dessert. Berries can help prevent cataracts, ward off cancer, prevent constipation, reduce the risk of infection, and protect our brain power. So there's a lot of good books out there that'll give us what we can do with different foods. I brought something, and I'll hand out after we finish. I thought this was a neat article in a magazine. It says 10 foods that keep you young. And those 10 foods were almonds, bell peppers, chard, which is, anybody familiar with Swiss chard? It's like a lettuce. Cherries, cranberries, duck, yams, red onions, trout, turmeric. So those are all foods that can keep you young. And most of us would not eat those foods, but I brought that article to share with everybody. We have probably about 15 more minutes, so I'm going to stop and let you ask questions if anybody has any. There's a wealth of information out there. We have this really good book that I kind of pulled some different ideas out of. This is a well-used book at our store. I'll be happy to talk to anybody one-on-one, or if you want to come to the store, we have some business cards for you to know where we're located on Lone Oak Road, and we'll be happy to meet with anybody one-on-one. I do set up appointments with people. If you come in, show me the medications you're taking. That's my other big beef. It's not necessarily about foods, but because we are such an educated society, we have the internet, we have magazine articles and things like that, be very, very careful of what you're taking. If you're taking prescription medicines, just because a magazine article says that you need to take this product because it'll make you feel better, or take that because it'll make you feel better, you need to know if it's going to interfere with your medicine. And it's really, really important, because we have a lot of people that come in that they're taking all these supplements, but they still feel bad. Well, they feel bad because that particular supplement is causing adverse reactions with their medication. So educate yourself. It doesn't matter to me where you shop, but just make sure that those people will look up your prescription medicines that you're on, and make sure you're not buying something in their store that's going to hurt you and not help you. So be sure about that. You know, if you come to our store, I usually ask people, bring a list of your medicines, but we will help you, kind of guide you. But you can't go wrong with food. Yeah, there are some foods, like I mentioned, the nightshade foods, but overall, the chance of you getting harmed are more with taking an herb in a pill form than eating something from the grocery store. So just, you know, educate yourself about that. So, anybody have any questions? For arthritis? Let me flip back to that page. For arthritis, you want to avoid, they're called nightshade vegetables, peppers like bell peppers, eggplants, tomatoes, white potatoes, things like that. They might have a few other listed in here. Let me see. Yeah, that's the one they listed, and they call them nightshade. And a lot of people have fibromyalgia, and they're finding with fibromyalgia, if people will eliminate wheat and gluten, the nightshade vegetables, that they really start doing better. And eliminating dairy as well. There's a lot of issues in our milk products that we're unaware of. Right, but the tomatoes as well. Tomatoes would be a nightshade.
But with a red pepper that was used to be a bell pepper,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care for green.
It would be the same. I mean, because it's a pepper.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
just a pepper. Okay.
Yep, it would be the same. Mm-hmm. You have a question? I think most things that we put in our body, it usually takes a good 48 to 72 hours to get what we ate today out. So I would say give it a couple of weeks, just because that would be a good time frame. I know I've gone through a recent period where I've noticed that certain things that I eat are affecting my health a certain way. And after about 72 hours of not eating those things, I start feeling better and can tell. So I would say at least give it a couple of weeks, 72 hours. But it will be amazing if you can see the difference. And some people can and some people can't. And that's the other thing, we're all saying, well, my sister or my brother take this and it helps them. It may not help you. Everybody's body's different. We're all created differently. So know what works for your body. Correct. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and according to this, they list white potatoes. They didn't say anything about the red skin potatoes. But if I was going to do an experiment, I would eat no potatoes and try it. And then what they call it a elimination diet. Like you'll start out and you'd eliminate maybe potatoes, or maybe you'll eliminate dairy or milk, or just milk or just cheese, or you'll eliminate wheat. And then you see, okay, I've eliminated this for so long and I feel this way, now add it back and see what happens. Or some people will do a rotation diet where they change what they eat to see how they feel based on that. And that's what a lot of people are doing with a lot of disease processes, is a elimination diet. Anybody else? I'm sorry.
Does there seem to be anything in particular that's causing the rise in celiac disease?
My personal opinion is I think it's education. I think that we're more educated about it. The problem with celiac disease is that it looks like irritable bowel syndrome, or it looks like diverticulosis. It looks like so many things that by the time they've ruled all those things out, then they go to celiac, that, the person's been sick really, really a long time. I think education has been our biggest issue. I have a little girl that comes into my store, she's 2. And she has celiac, and it breaks my heart because she has a very severe celiac. If she goes to daycare and by chance gets a piece of bread that's not gluten-free, she ends up in the hospital, and she's 2. I also firmly, this is again personal belief system, is that because of how our food has been modified and changed over the years, that where we once could tolerate certain grains, we can't tolerate them anymore. So I think that's the one thing. So I think it's because people are more aware of what's happening, and our doctors are getting more educated, but our doctors really are still not as up on celiac. It's not as common. It's also kind of like the ADD autism issue. Most kids could possibly have a spectrum of autism, but they're diagnosed as ADD because that's what we know the most about. And Laura was talking earlier about the essential oils. I don't think it's that our doctors don't want us to know about foods or vitamins and supplements. It's just that that's not their expertise. So it requires that we have to search out a lot on our own or go to people to help us find that information. And there's several doctors in town that actually do send people to our store and say, buy this supplement or buy that supplement. But I would definitely tell you, have an open conversation with your healthcare provider, because you don't want to be taking something herbal supplement and him put you or her put you on something else that's going to cause you more problems. So, did I answer your question about the celiac? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know, for instance, if you choose to eliminate some of the food that may aggravate your arthritis, how long does it usually take before you start to notice the difference? You're going to eliminate all the potatoes and the cheese, things like that.
I would suggest that you start out eliminating one thing, because you may find that it's one certain thing that's making your arthritis worse. I would definitely give it a week or at least 2 weeks. I mean, some people notice right away. I notice within about 48 hours. I've actually haven't been diagnosed as, we're talking about celiac, but I've realized that if I eat wheat, I start having some symptoms. Whereas as our family, we've started cutting out wheat. And after about 48 hours, I can totally tell a difference. But what I put in my body, as we talked about, what we eat today affects us later on. What I put in my body, 2 days ago might be affecting me today. But I would at least give yourself 2 weeks, because otherwise you're not really going to know. And eliminate one thing at a time. If you're going to eliminate, say, the potatoes and the peppers and all that, do that, then go to dairy. And then you can see, oh, I feel much better now that I've eliminated both. Or, I don't feel as good, so maybe it wasn't dairy. Maybe it was just the peppers or whatever. So, anybody else have any more questions? I think I'm down to my 5-minute warning. Well, I hope that I shared some information with you guys. It's a lot of information to try to condense into 50 minutes, but we're more than happy to help you just to get our stores open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 5:30 Monday through Friday, and 10 to 3 on Saturday. We'll be happy to meet with anybody. If you want a lot of time, or if you want to talk to me, if you'll call, I really do try to make appointments, because if I'm talking to you, I want to give you my full attention versus trying to talk to 3 other people around you. But be happy to help you guys, and I'm going to see if Laura will help me if anybody wants to have this article on 10 foods that keep you young. We'll pass them around, and she'll have some of my business cards if anybody wants them. But I thank y'all for your time, and I hope y'all have a wonderful afternoon.